Hello my lovelies, my name is Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video I wanted to finally talk about post-operative depression in its own kind of dedicated space. In this video I'm going to be talking about depression, suicidal thoughts, mental health well-being, struggles with that. So if that's not your cup of tea, which is absolutely fine, then I would highly recommend clicking off this video and going and finding another very nice, very light video on my channel, which I will link just above. So I also just wanted to premise this video by saying that post-operative depression is not necessarily indicative of the outcome of your surgery. It can be completely unrelated. In my case, for example, I think a lot of people would assume that my post-operative depression came as a result of me being unhappy with my surgery, and to a certain extent that's true, but it's true in certain aspects. It's not necessarily true in the way that you would immediately kind of associate it. And so I wanted to talk about my journey with post-operative depression. I wanted to talk about the causes of post-operative depression. I wanted to talk about the fact that it's kind of lesser known. So yeah, that's where we're going. So on the 15th of February 2020, I underwent sexual reassignment surgery. I underwent a vaginoplasty, which inverted my penis inside of myself to create a neovaginal cavity and give me a neovagina. It's a very common practice in the trans community for male to female transitioners, and although I don't necessarily associate with being 100% female, that's definitely the category of which I fall into because I very much present within the female binary. And so having a vaginoplasty for me was like years and years and years of hard work. I started my transition, I started having conversations about my transition when I was 12 years old, and I started actively transitioning when I was 13, and I transitioned all the way up until I was 22 before I had my sexual reassignment surgery. I come from a very low socioeconomic background, so I couldn't pay for it myself. I had to wait on NHS waiting lists and jump through hoops and things like that. And so having my surgery was a very, very big deal for me. And now my case is quite unique because obviously I had surgery a month before a global lockdown happened, and the global lockdown triggered several people to have mental health related episodes. And as someone who transitioned most of their life, I had pre-existing mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression. And so in my case, I can never really tell if I'm 100% a sufferer of post-operative depression specifically, or if it was an amalgamation of those different things. But around about a month and a half after my surgery, I started experiencing post-op complications. So I started experiencing wound adhesion, I started experiencing hypergranulation, I started experiencing difficulty dilating and things like that. And for someone who had worked their entire lives for this surgery, I think that was really, really jarring, and it led me to spiral down a really dark path. And then that, coupled with the isolation of lockdown, coupled with the separation of my family, but also the reliancy on my partner at the time and my mum, really caused me to go into this very dark place. It caused me to gain a significant amount of weight, which added to my depression as a long-term sufferer with body dysmorphic disorder, which is BDD, and also a long-term sufferer of having a very disordered approach to eating, whether that's in my early youth when I suffered with binging and purging, or whether that's in my older life suffering with binge eating disorder, which is called BED. And so all of those things added together, coupled with the fact that I had lost my job, coupled with the fact that I was completely isolated whilst in my recovery, coupled with the fact that I couldn't have my revision because during COVID, all doctors and surgeons were allocated elsewhere, I became really, really depressed. a depression deeper than any I had ever experienced. And it wasn't until after my second revision in the August of 2020 that I had started to see a therapist regarding the fact that they assumed that I had had post-operative depression, which is something I'd never ever thought of before. And the main causes for post-operative depression are having depression before your surgery, suffering from chronic pain, which can obviously make you extremely depressed, reactions to anaesthetic, so negative reactions to anaesthetic. It can be reactions to pain medications. It can be something as simple as facing your own mortality. Obviously, there's always a chance that you're not going to wake up, but you come to terms with this fact that you can be broken and fixed, and it's very jarring experience, I would say. The physical and emotional stress of the surgery can definitely be a contributor to post-operative depression. Concerns of how you're healing is a massive one. I know that was a huge contributor for me, but that's a huge contributor to post-operative depression. Anxiety over possible complications, again, was a huge one for me. Feelings of guilt on depending on others was a massive one for me. Concerns that the surgery might not be enough, which was very impactful in my life. And then obviously there's the stress of recovery, the stress of the cost implications of recovery, of time off work. You know, I had gone through a surgery that required me to have 12 weeks off, and I had just lost my job, and all of a sudden I had no income, and luckily at the time I had savings, and I don't have those savings anymore, and I miss those savings very much. Please come back. And so those are the main causes of post-operative depression. And for me, I would say that the biggest instigators for me were just the general stress of recovery, pre-existing mental health conditions, concern over my rate of recovery, concern over complications, concern over isolation, and then concern over dependency on others, I think are probably were the biggest contributing factors in mine, coupled with going through the pandemic, coupled with extreme weight gain, extreme isolation, coupled with joblessness and lack of income. And for me, it was very much, it was the darkest time of my life. I won't sugarcoat it. And it felt awful because I'd worked for such a long time for this surgery that so many people had wanted. And I knew so many friends who were on the waiting list to have gender reassignment surgery as the pandemic hit. And then there were huge delays caused by that. And it seemed such a selfish thing to talk about the depression that I suffered, obviously post-op. And while there's an element of that maybe is true, it took me a long time, but I did finally realise that no, my feelings are valid and my experience is valid, and that there are some warning signs that I wanted to tell you about that you can look out for. And so if you're going through your surgery and you notice any of these coming out of it, go and seek help, go and speak to a therapist, speak to your GP, look for online help groups. I'll leave some links just down below to help you out and to find some places that really helped me. But if you're coming out of surgery and you're in that kind of like 4 to 8 week recovery period, and you're noticing a huge amount of focus of your mental capacity on your recovery time, on the dependency on the people around you, on the financial implications and all of those things, these can be early indicators that you might be suffering from post-operative depression. And post-operative depression is not always listed as a complication of surgery. It can become a result of any surgery whatsoever. I obviously had it for my vagina, but I did not have it for my arm. And so it really is varying kind of case to case. So it's just about looking out for that and recognizing when to get help. I would say if any of you are looking to go in for surgery of any description anyway, I would recommend going down a therapy route for when you come out of surgery anyway. Going through surgery is an incredibly traumatic experience for the body, and whether or not you realise that, having a space to process that properly is a really invaluable thing, and something that I wish I had done was set up therapy beforehand. So if anyone's going through it, I would highly recommend speaking to a specialist. I would recommend being surrounded by loved ones. I would recommend putting aside quite a bit of money, because that can help you with the concern around the financial implications of having a surgery. I would recommend making sure that you're comfortable and you're in a position to recover with plenty of not distractions but activities to keep you mentally occupied, especially if your surgery, like mine, is something that's going to keep you bedbound, is something that's going to require assistance to do things like go to the bathroom or get in the bath. So in terms of those things, that's really where I would go. And it's just about recognizing the changes in your behaviors. You know yourself better than anybody else. And if you're starting to notice that you're going down a dark path, or like for myself, I was binging at a higher rate than normal, I was gaining weight, I was becoming more isolated, more removed, quite nasty. I was becoming very bitter, I was becoming very just mean-spirited, and I was eating to excess, and I was avoiding communication with people. And you're the best judge of your own character. You know yourself better than anybody else. And so when you notice those things, just look for help, look for support, look for community, and really put in the work now so that you don't suffer from the long-term effects like I did. So my post-operative depression was very much overshadowed by the pandemic, overshadowed by my partner losing a parent, overshadowed by a job search. And so I didn't actually process any of those emotions for about 9 months, because I was so focused on my revision, I was so focused on my partner's grief, I was so focused on my weight gain that I didn't actually take the time to process any of that emotion. And I know that we all seem to be playing catch up from the pandemic anyway, because we all had to face some really challenging mental health concerns during the pandemic, because we were isolated and we were very much kind of met with this like terrifying kind of realization that it's just us and our thoughts for 2 years. And so I understand that a lot of people really struggled with that, like I did. But that's what I would say you can do to best protect yourself, because obviously I then went down a route of processing everything 9 months later and ended up making attempts on my own life, of becoming suicidal. I'm very happy to say that now I'm on sertraline for my depression and anxiety. This is monitored through my GP. I would highly recommend going to your GP for any concerns regarding your mental health well-being and just your mental state in general. I could not recommend enough putting together some therapy for when you get out of surgery to discuss the impact of your surgery, the trauma on your body, the complications, your concerns and things like that. Making sure that you're comfortable and surrounded by things or people that you love, making sure that you're mentally stimulated, you've got time off work, or you have the finances to take time away from work. And just remember to take it easy on yourself. Surgery is a huge trauma on the body. It can be something as small as a dental extraction or as big as brain surgery. For me, it's the difference between a broken elbow and a completely reconstructed genital area. And so it's very much about just taking it easy, taking it one step at a time, being kind to yourself, allowing yourself space to heal, not expecting your body to do it kind of immediately. But I just wanted to do that kind of chatty video because I wanted to talk about something that's really quite serious, and the causes and kind of what to look out for and my experience with that. But I wanted to do it in kind of a sat down, informal, kind of bubbly but not too bubbly kind of way. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you're having a lovely day. I cannot stress to you enough how much I hope you're avoiding transphobia, because it is a very a very transphobic landscape out there at the moment. So I really hope you're avoiding transphobia. I hope you're having a lovely Pride Month, because this is my first video during the month of Pride. Cheerful, I know, sorry. And I will see you next week for another video. Bye, lovelies.